So we were discussing in the last lecture the topic of exemptions from GST. And today we will wind up this topic, exemption from GST. If you remember, we were discussing all the exemptions under section 11 subsection 1 or section 6 subsection 1 of the IGST Act. Because all these exemptions are through notification. So section 11(1) of CGST Act and 6(1) of IGST Act gives the power to grant exemptions in case of supply of goods or services through notification. So all those what I have been discussing with you for the past 2 to 3 days is the exemption through notification. So same subsection is going on. The list of goods was not much large as compared to services. Services are a little bit technical to be understood. So almost we have covered 17 to 18 different category of services. And the last service which we covered yesterday was services by way of transportation of passengers. That was the last service which I have discussed with you in the last lecture. And now let me start with my next exempted service. So let me have my notepad with you so that we can start writing or we can start understanding. So let me start with my next service which is exempt. So passenger transportation services I have covered in the last lecture, and now let us discuss goods transportation service. Now, what about goods transportation services? So let us discuss those services which are exempt as far as the category goods transportation services is concerned. The first point is by road. Services by way of transportation of goods by road. Tax free. But in some cases it is not tax free except the services of a goods transportation agency. So when the goods are transported by road, then there is no need to pay any GST on that. However, If the goods are transported through trucks, and the trucks belongs to an agency which is providing you the services of goods transportation. If services are provided through goods transportation agencies, there are so many truck unions or the people who are giving the services to the supplier as well as the recipient who are transporting the goods through transport agency. Through trucks, we have so many agencies. We call these as transporters. Then GST is payable. Or through courier, when goods are sent, then GST is payable. Other than these, if you are sending the goods by road, then there is no need to pay any GST. Now, what about rail? Goods are also transported through rails, trains. Services by way of transportation of goods by rail or ships or a vessel from one place in India to another place. Of the following goods. Now, technically, when you transport the goods through rail, then it is subject to GST, but some exemption is given. In some cases, exemption is given. If you are transporting, if the railway is transporting relief materials, meant for whom? Victims of calamities, disasters, accidents. Then that relief material, though, is a good, but without GST. No need to pay any GST. Defense equipments. Without GST. Newspapers. No need to pay any GST when these are transported through rail or ship. Agricultural produce. Milk products. Milk, salt, rice, pulses, etc. No need for any GST. Railway equipments. Railway equipments and materials. No need to pay any GST. That's it. So technically speaking, when goods are transported through rail, GST is payable, but not in case of supply of following goods through railways. Other than this, if you are supplying the goods, you have to pay GST. Now, when by road I transport anything, then there is no GST, except in two cases: when the goods by road are transported through goods transportation agency or through courier. But within goods transportation agency, some exemption is given. So my next category is what? Services provided by a goods transport agency by way of transport of what? Same thing which we have discussed in the last point. Relief material, defense, newspaper, agriculture produce, milk, and railway. These 6 points are as it is same. A to 5 points discussed in the last. In the previous end. Same. If you transport the same things through road also, with the help of transporters, there is no need to pay any GST. One thing is additional which was not there in case of railways, and that is goods where I think you can listen my voice. There was some connection break.
Yes, sir.
Goods where consideration charged for the transportation of goods on a consignment. Transport fee does not exceed or till rupees 1500. So when the transporter is charging for that consignment and the transport charges are till 1500, then there is no GST. But if suppose the transport company is charging 2000 rupees as the service charge, or you can say transport charge, then GST is payable. This is the new point. Next point. So within goods transportation, I have covered 3 different categories. You can say subcategories. Next point is what? Even within goods transportation, some other exemption is also given. Services provided by a goods transportation agency or goods transport agency. GTA, normally we call it as GTA. To any unregistered person. To an unregistered person. Other than the following. So whenever any person sends the goods through any transporter, suppose I am sending some goods to my friend who is in Mumbai. Suppose I want to send some goods to my friend through a transporter who is in, and my friend is in Mumbai. So I booked my luggage or package, and that will be delivered at Mumbai. And this transporter has charged 3000 rupees. There will be no GST on that. Because the services are provided to whom? To me, and I am, if an unregistered person, there is no GST. So you can see that so many exemptions are given. Technically speaking, even to the goods, from the goods transportation, as if businessman books the luggages, then only GST becomes applicable. Otherwise, in most of the cases, it will go without GST. But who should be an unregistered person? Anyone except the following. So in the following cases, you cannot say exemption will be given. But other than the following unregistered person, exemption can be given. Now, first point, who can be unregistered? Any factory. Registered under Factories Act. Under the Factories Act. Now, if I am saying unregistered, that I am talking about in GST laws, under GST laws, whether I am registered or not. But now, these people are registered under Factories Act, not GST laws. So, any factory has booked their luggage. Any factory, for example, in any industrial area, some items are booked from Delhi to be delivered to Ludhiana with the help of transporter. So it's possible that this factory might be unregistered under GST laws but registered under Factories Act. GST is still applicable. Why? Because the provision says when these services are provided to any unregistered person but other than the following, then it is exempt, otherwise not. So factory will not be covered under exempted category because I am using the word other than the following. Similarly, B point. Any society registered under the Societies Registration Act. Any cooperative society. Any partnership firm. So in these cases, there is no exemption. And any casual taxable person registered oblique unregistered under GST laws. In these 5 cases also, the GST exemption points can be understood. That's it. So this is sufficient for goods transportation services. So many categories we have got. 20th category. Now, different cooperative housing societies are there. If you are living in any apartment, then your parents must be paying some monthly charges to the society, to the association of the society. What about those charges? That is also a service. You are paying those service charges because you are getting water facilities, sewerage facility, night watch or watchman facility, etc. etc. So the next category is services by an unincorporated oblique a non-profit entity. It basically covers societies, housing societies. In Delhi, we have so many apartments. Those are housing societies. So this point basically covers those societies. Basically covers. Others can also be covered here. But at least those are covered. Entry number, CGST Act, and entry number, IGST Act. So what you should cover here is only one is sufficient. Services by an unincorporated body oblique a non-profit entity. Registered under any law, may not be GST but might be any other law, to its own members. So this point is necessary, to its own members as share of contribution. Might be as a trade union. So this body might be trade union. So many organizations are there, trade unions are there. So every trade union has some members and they collect monthly charges, 10 rupees, 20 rupees, 30 rupees from the members. So technically the union is providing some services for a consideration. When any help requires, the members will approach the union and the union will try to help. So it's a service against a consideration, but that is tax free as a trade union. Or contribution for providing any activity which is GST free, for the provision, as a contribution for the provision of carrying out any activity which is exempt from GST. Suppose this body, this unincorporated body or this association is charging from the members 5,000 rupees per month and is providing any service which is GST free, then on this 5,000 rupees also, whatever services are provided, no GST should be there, which is exempt from GST. And here it is a limit up to an amount of 7,500 per month. Above two cases, no limit on the amount, no limit, but now there is a limit on the amount also, up to an amount of rupees 7,500 per month per member for arranging the goods, for sourcing of goods or services from a third party. For the common use of its members. In a housing society. Now, for example, there is a society in Rohini, Delhi area. There is any society in Rohini, Delhi, and there are 100 flats in that society. And for each flat per month, 500 rupees is the charge. Charge of what? To provide security guards in that society. Security guards in that society, 500 rupees per month is the charge. It is GST free. There will be no GST required. Why? Because this organization or association is collecting from the members up to 7,500 per month for availing some services from a third party. So this association might hire any agency which will provide security services for the common use of its members. So that service charge which is collected from the flat owners till 7,500 per month, if the amount doesn't exceed 7,500 per month, it is GST. That's it. Only one is sufficient. Next heading is construction services. Here also we will cover only limited point. When construction services, so many times in villages we have farms, and farmers are in need of tube wells in villages for the crop harvesting purposes. Now, to run the tube well, electricity is required, and it is possible that the fields in the villages are far away from the village, from the houses where residential area is. So electricity company has to spend huge amount of money to make sure that electricity reaches to the fields also, so that tube wells can run. Now that is also services by the electricity company, that is GST free. Suppose 5,000 rupees is charged to provide electricity in the fields, then this 5,000 rupees which this electricity company will charge will be without GST. Technically it's a service, but government says make it exempt. So we have this point, entry number 10A or 11A, services supplied. Remember, we are discussing only relevant points, otherwise the list is very lengthy. Services list of exemption is very lengthy. Services supplied by electricity distribution utilities, that means companies, by way of construction, installation, of infrastructure for extending electricity distribution network. Transformers will be installed. So many other expenses are also there for extending electricity distribution network. Up to the tube well. Of the farmer for agricultural use. So again, it is to make sure that agricultural produce is tax free totally. That is the main intention. In this only you cover this point. Next point is renting services. When you take some shops on rent. Next, renting. Now in renting service, which are exempt? Residential renting is exempt. Services by way of renting of residential dwelling for use as residence is tax free, no GST. Income tax is of course chargeable, because any landlord who will earn the rent, for example 50,000 per month is the rent, then income tax is payable. But technically that is also a services which is provided by that landlord to the tenant. GST is not paid. If commercial property is given on rent, then the landlord will not only pay the income tax if that person is covered under the income tax slab, but will also pay the GST also. So you cannot say that why there is double taxation, because income tax is a separate concept, GST is a separate concept. So both the taxes are separate. So it's possible that on single transaction both the taxes are levied. And one more exempted entry is, so residential letting is exempt from GST, commercial letting of shops is not exempt from GST. Now in hotels, when you take the accommodation, then it depends what is your charge per day stay in that hotel. On that basis, GST exemption will be determined. So services by a hotel, guest house, club, etc. For residential purpose, normally in hotel, we go for residential purpose only. To stay, residential purpose having value of supply of a unit of accommodation. Unit means room of a unit of accommodation, not the entire hotel. Room of a unit of accommodation till rupees, if the value of supply is till rupees 1000 per day, it is exempt. And if the hotel room stay charges are, for example, 2000 per day, then it is taxable. So if the room charges does not exceed 1000 per day, no GST. If room charges exceeds 1000 per day, there will be GST. Next, hiring charges. When you give vehicles to hire, services of giving vehicles on hire. Now, so many times you are also availing the services of taxis. That is nothing but what services of giving vehicles on hire. But it depends who has availed this service. Whether you as an individual are availing the vehicles on hire charges, or whether, for example, your institution is availing the services of vehicles on hire charges. So many times even government avail the services of vehicles on hire charges. Government also needs so many times vehicles on hire. So which hiring charges are exempt as far as services on hire charges are availed? Vehicles, not service of vehicles on hire charges is availed. So which point should be covered here? Services by way of giving on hire. Suppose you are the owner of 2 cars and those cars are hired by whom? A point, to a state transport undertaking. Any government authority is there and the government transport undertaking is hiring your vehicle. That vehicle which can carry, so in vehicle there are so many categories. Some vehicles can carry 4 passengers, 10 passengers, 20 passengers, so it depends. So when you are giving your motor vehicle to a state transport undertaking, and that motor vehicle can carry more than 12 passengers, then there is no need for you to pay any GST on that. Earning, whatever is the higher charges, that will be without GST. This is first point. Now suppose you have a truck and you are giving the truck to any goods transport agency, services by way of giving on hire. to a goods transport agency. Now, goods transport agency can be private also, doesn't matter. To a goods transport agency, a means of transportation of goods. So you have given your truck on hire charges to any company which is a goods transport agency, a transporter, at 50,000 per month. No need to charge any GST on that. A means of transportation of goods. That's it. So do only this much in case of giving on hire. Otherwise, when you yourself will hire some taxi, conceptually that service is not exempt. But so many times we have noticed that the person doesn't charge GST from you. If you hire some vehicle and for example lump sum payment is 1,000, so most of the times you don't collect the bill. Even if you collect the bill, it's possible that there is no GST. Why? Because in that case it is possible that the service provider who is giving the vehicles to you on hire charges, that person's aggregate turnover is not exceeding 10 lakh, 20 lakh or 40 lakh as the case may be. That is why no registration is required. And if no registration is required, GST cannot be collected. Next point, infrastructure related. You can see there are so many categories and we are covering only limited points. Now, services related to infrastructure sector. Now, which are those which are related to infrastructure? Like so many times you pay toll tax when you cross any highway. That toll tax is without GST. So service by way of no GST is charged on that toll receipt. If 60 rupees is the amount, then there is no GST in that 60 rupees. Service by way of access to a road or bridge on payment of toll charges, tax free. Or on payment of annuity. Annuity means where monthly pass is there or lump sum amount is given to cross that toll. That is also not subject to any GST. Electricity companies are distributing electricity. Now, when you say annuity, then the list number only changes. It becomes 23A and it becomes 24A only. Otherwise, the concept is same. Now, for electricity companies, that is also a type of infrastructure, providing electricity to every corner of this nation. At every corner of this nation is nothing but infrastructure related work. That is also GST free. So, transmission or distribution. Electricity by an electricity transmission public distribution company, tax free. Tax free, no GST because it is also infrastructure. Next point, science and tech, S&T. Services related to science and technology. Space programs are launched Okay, so satellites are sent. Now, in some cases, GST exemption is necessary. Entry number of IGST Act I have forgotten. I will check and then tell you. Now, satellite launch services. Now, when ISRO launched these satellites, Indian Space Research Organization launched these satellites, we have some government agencies and some private companies also, but mostly government agencies, which provide the launch pad services to launch a satellite. So when satellite launch services, and so many times ISRO also launches the satellites for some foreign countries also. So ISRO also provides launch services. So satellite launch services supplied by ISRO, and there is a company Antariksh Corporation Limited, and one more company, New Space India Limited. When these companies or organizations provide satellite launch services, GST is exempt. Suppose they are charging 300 crore rupees, there will be no GST. So entry number, I will tell you about IGST. That is not relevant, but I will tell you that. And the last is what? Miscellaneous service. After this, the list of supply of services is over. Miscellaneous services. Those which cannot be fit in any category, we call them as miscellaneous. Under Right to Information Act, services are supplied to you. You are paying, for example, 10 rupees, and you are getting some information from any department through RTI. So technically it's a service, but it is GST. Slaughter of animals. At so many places we have these factories, you can say, or these places where, not factories word is not suitable, the places where animals are slaughtered. So that service is also GST free. Services by way of slaughtering of animals. Then we have embassies, or we have missions, foreign diplomatic missions which are located in India. If those missions are providing some services, that is GST free. Those missions are not supposed to pay any GST. Services by a foreign diplomatic mission located in India. And then that RTA related point. Services by way of providing information under RTI Act. Text. Let me cover this entry number. Science and Tech. This entry number is 20C, but that is not necessary for you to know. Now these are those services. These are those services. The above services are those which are exempt from GST, whether supplied intrastate or interstate. So these are those services, all these 25 different heading services. Whether you supply these intrastate or interstate, no GST. If you supply intrastate, no CGST, no SGST. If you supply interstate, no IGST. But apart from these services, there are some services which can only be supplied interstate. Intrastate is not possible. Like when you import something, that supply is always by default treated as interstate. So there is no question of intra in that case. So now I will be discussing now the above 26 services, I can say. Now I will be discussing those services now which are only interstate and exempt. Now services. Now apart from above services, intra or inter, now apart from above services which are exempt from tax, the following interstate supply of services is also exempt. So apart from above list, the following interstate supply of services is also exempt. First point. Now which is first category? So not category. So since these are very limited, so rather than making category, let me directly tell you. So now the list entry number will only be IGST because these are not in CGST. These are only interstate by default. So my entry number will be that which is mentioned in the IGST. I hope you have understood the categorization. Understanding concept is necessary. People can tell the provision, but they will not be able to tell exactly what the concept is all about. So my first point is services received from a provider of service located in a non-taxable territory. Now, who has received this service? So, by whom? By whom? Now, in every service, you will easily notice that yes, intrastate is not at all possible in such cases. How can I say that intrastate is not possible in such cases? Because now the service provider is in a non-taxable territory. So what is non-taxable territory? The place outside India. So when any place outside India comes, it by default becomes interstate supply. Now any person who is in non-taxable territory is providing some service to whom? To whom that is necessary? To the government, to the central government. So government of India bears some services from Germany, and the service provider is in Germany, exempt. So to central government, state government, union territory, local authority, oblique any individual also. I can also avail such service. Any individual also, for any purpose other than what? For any purpose other than the purpose of business or profession or commerce, tax free. So when you receive any service from any person who is in Germany, and that is for my personal purpose only, it is a supply, but it is tax free supply. First one. Now, if any charitable entity is receiving such service tax free, any entity registered under section 12 AA of the Income Tax Act. For what purpose? For providing charitable activities. And I have already discussed with you earlier the examples of charitable activities. Orphanage children, taking care of orphanage children, mentally traumatized people, alcoholic or drug addict people, etc. That I have already discussed. So I am not discussing this charitable activity now. Then also, by whom? Who can avail such services, and that will be tax free? C point. Another person who is also in non-taxable territory, a person. So supplier is also in non-taxable territory, a person is also located in non-taxable territory. Then these services are tax free. This is one service. Now in Delhi we have some offices of international organizations also. In India or in every country we have the offices of United Nations, etc. etc. Now these people can also import some services. So another list. Import of services by United Nations or any specified international organization like WHO, etc. A specified international organization, not for personal use, for official use of the United Nations, or rather I should write for their official use. For their official use. These services are also exempt. Then we have some missions also or embassies also in India. Those embassies can import anything from their own home country. That is also tax free. Import of services by foreign diplomats. Foreign diplomatic mission or diplomats, or we can call the word diplomatic agents, posted there. When these missions import some services, or officers who are in these missions import some services, then that is also GST free. No need to pay any GST. But we have some conditions to be fulfilled. So those conditions I am not discussing. For your level, you can assume that those theoretical conditions are fulfilled. Conditions to be satisfied, only then exemption is allowed, otherwise not. So you have to assume that the conditions are satisfied. Reserve Bank of India so many times needs services. So services received by the Reserve Bank of India from outside India in relation to management of foreign exchange reserves. Maybe it's possible that the RBI needs some specialized services of any international economist who might be in USA to manage the foreign exchange reserves. That service is tax free. No need to pay any tax. That's it. So for your level only this much is sufficient. Now broadly what I have discussed, if you remember, my broad discussion going on is under section 11(1) of the CGST Act and section 6(1) of the IGST Act. Within this, I have discussed only one notification. That was my first notification only, where I discussed some goods as well as some services which are exempt. Within services, I have discussed separately intrastate supply of services and interstate. I have discussed that around 26 services are inter as well as intra, and some 4 or 5 are only intra, only inter. This is what I have discussed. But don't you think that you should not assume that you have only one notification which has been issued under 11(1). There are so many notifications issued. So for the time being, within section 11 subsection 1 and 6 subsection 1, I have discussed with you first notification only. That notification was very lengthy. It covers goods as well as services. Now I am discussing my second point. Or you can say I have discussed two notifications, one notification of goods and second notification of services. Now I am discussing within section 11(1) and 6(1) my third notification, and my third notification says that intrastate supplies. It says that intrastate supplies of goods or services. Now these are another notifications. Another notification, intrastate supplies of goods or services or both received by a deductor. So I am using this new word, deductor. Received by a deductor from any unregistered supplier is 100% exempt. Is 100% exempt. Now since the supply is intrastate, then which tax will be applicable? CGST as well as SGST or UTGST, whatever is the case. So this is the notification. So this is another point. Now let me briefly explain it. When you do intrastate supply, now before that, if you remember section 9.4, what it says, if you remember section 9.4, in case some specified recipients, whosoever is the recipient of service, if specified recipients are receiving any service from unregistered supplier, if you remember that section 9.4, in some cases when these recipients, so not every recipient, specified people are covered. If these recipients receive any service from supplier, logically GST should be payable by supplier, but since the supplier is unregistered, recipients have to pay GST on reverse charge mechanism. Do you remember this point or not? Please raise your hand if you remember this point. If you remember this point, please raise your hand. Okay. Under section 9.4, I'm not discussing 5.4 because it is not interstate supply. This notification is only exempting intrastate supply, not interstate. So in some cases, when if you are that recipient who is covered under the notification of paying tax on reverse charge basis when you receive the supply from unregistered supplier, then you are 100% exempt from paying any central tax or state tax. So this is another exemption. This supply of goods, the goods or services which are supplied might not be exempt from GST. Suppose you are supplying as unregistered supplier, you are supplying those goods or services which are subject to GST. But if this supply is intrastate, if the supplier is unregistered, if the recipient is that person who is covered under payment of tax as per reverse charge basis, then the recipient is under no obligation to pay any tax because exemption will be allowed on such supplies. But one condition is there to claim the exemption, and the condition is that now this recipient, it is not mentioned whether this recipient is registered or unregistered. But for reverse charge, one thing is sure that the recipient must be registered, and there are two cases of registration. Suppose this recipient is registered. So why this person is registered? This is one question which we should ask. So if this person is, for example, Mr. X, and if this person is registered, why Mr. X is registered? Maybe because Mr. X aggregate turnover exceeds the limits. This is one of the reasons. Or my turnover is only 2 lakh rupees, but I need to take registration. I need to take registration not because my turnover exceeds the limit. I need to take registration because as a deductor. As a deductor means who is deductor? Who is supposed to deduct tax at source? Who is deductor? As the name suggests, I don't know whether you have seen that video of TDS or not. Had you seen the video, you would have learned it. Who is deductor? A person who is supposed to deduct tax at source on supplier's behalf. So again listen, supply of goods received by the recipient, any recipient from unregistered supplier is subject to reverse charge mechanism under section 9 subsection 4 if the supply is intrastate. However, if this registered recipient is registered not because his turnover exceeds the limit, but he is under an obligation to register because he is a deductor in the capacity of deductor. Who is the deductor? As per section 51. Now this TDS section is section 51. Under section 51, you have not read it, I think, so read it. Suppose as per section 51, this recipient is compulsorily required to be registered, because until and unless you are registered, how can you deduct tax at source? Supplier is Mr. Y. See this example. Supplier is Mr. Y, unregistered person. Recipient is, for example, a local authority. For example, recipient is a local authority. For example, recipient is a local authority. If supplier is supplying the goods of 2 lakh, recipient is supposed to pay the amount of 2 lakh. If recipient is supposed to pay amount of 2 lakh, suppose under section 51, suppose TDS is also required. Suppose TDS is also required. Now, local authority cannot deduct TDS unless this authority is registered, because only a registered person has the power to either collect the tax or deduct the tax. So for registration, I have two situations. Am I registered because my aggregate turnover exceeds the limits? Am I registered because of this reason? Or my turnover doesn't exceed the limit, but I was under an obligation to register. I'm registered, but not on my own choice, but under an obligation. Obligation under section 24 clause 6. I don't know whether you remember section 24 right now, because 24 was compulsory registration cases. Compulsory registration cases where you have to take registration, and 24 clause 6 was all those people who are supposed to deduct tax at source under section 51 must have to take registration. So if I have taken registration because of this point, then this supply is tax free, no tax. But if I have not taken registration because of 24 clause 6, but I have taken the registration, why? Because my turnover is 2 crore rupees, then this supply is taxable. So this point you should remember. I don't know whether you have understood or not. It might look like a little bit technical, but if understood, please raise your hand, and if not, then ask me the doubt. Are you getting a little bit idea that what I have explained? Okay, you have to read it again. When you listen to the video again, then I'm sure that you will understand this point. So I have discussed with you what? 3 notifications. Now, 4th notification. So I am discussing all the exemptions which have been given under section 11.1 or 6.1 through notifications. So 3 notifications have been covered. Now 4th one. Today I have to wind up this topic. Fourth notification. This is my 4th notification, which gives me exemption: goods or services imported by whom? By a special economic zone unit or SEZ developer. Fully exempt from IGST. This is my another notification. Because if you remember, any supply by a special economic zone unit or special economic zone developer is always treated as interstate supply. Always interstate supply under section 7 subsection 5 clause B of the IGST Act. Any supply of goods or services by, this is only for your knowledge if you have forgotten, any supply of goods or services by a special economic zone unit or developer is treated as by default interstate under section 7 subsection 5 clause B of the IGST Act. Now with this section I can say that these supplies are also interstate, and if these are interstate only IGST could have been levied, but these are totally tax free. So these are also through notification. Next notification, fifth. Do remember that section 11 subsection 1 is going on because all these exemptions are through notifications. Fifth notification. Now, Government of India has the power to grant licenses to extract petroleum and natural gas from the seabeds. So licenses are given. So this is related to that point. Supply of services by way of grant of license to explore petroleum crude or natural resources, not natural resources, natural gas. Now whether inter or intrastate doesn't matter. In the earlier case it was only interstate. In the third point notification it was intrastate, but now in this case it does not matter inter or intra. So whether intrastate or inter, both will be covered. When government gives the license to explore the crude or natural gas, so when the petroleum will be extracted, so some share of profit will be given to the government also. Government gives the license to any company, and when petroleum will be extracted, then the company has to share the profit with the government also. So that's a consideration. So I can say that government is giving consideration for the supply of services by way of licenses. Not government is giving consideration, government is receiving consideration for granting licenses to these companies. So for example, A Limited got the license to extract petroleum from, for example, Krishna Godavari basin. Okay, so we have these areas, Krishna Godavari region, from where the extraction normally goes on. A Limited has been given the licenses and the government gets the revenue. So technically government is earning the amount money. So consideration is given by A Limited and government gave the licenses. Tax free. This is also a supply. Giving license is also a supply from the government for a consideration, but that is totally tax free. 100% of the profit is tax free, whether CGST, IGST, UTGST, whatever, it is tax free supply, no tax. That's it. So with this, I have covered section 11.1 and section 5.1 of the IGST Act, which are giving me exemption through notifications. Next topic. Now next section is, it is one line section only. Next section for exemption is 11.2. 11.2 of the CGST Act and section 6.2 of the IGST Act. Now if you remember, under these sections exemption is also given, but not through notification. Under this section, notifications doesn't come. What comes are special orders. Under these sections, special orders are given to exempt any supply. Under these circumstances, which are exceptional nature circumstances, under these circumstances of an exceptional nature, it is not so easy to issue the order. So till today, there has not been any such order issued which is giving the exemption under section 11.2 or 6.2. But I am telling you the provision that through special orders, the government can exempt any supply if the circumstances of an exceptional nature has arisen, and these circumstances must be written in that order, that on what basis you are giving the exemption, and these circumstances must be stated to be mentioned in this order. This is only theoretical point. No such notification has been issued under, no such order has been issued under 11.2 and 6.2. With this, the topic exemptions of GST is over. So whatever we have covered is more than sufficient from your point of view. And that's all from my side for today. So the next class we will start another topic. Goodbye.